Hello. So I put in a job application with the team who made Grok 3. I did that today. And for the resume, I just shared links to my YouTube channels and LinkedIn profile and my GitHub that where it contains, some of my work, some of my writing. But I let them know they should use Grok 3 to try and collect data from me. And there I gave them a head start on some of the public links. And then I'd even be willing to let Grok 3 or whatever future model parse through my private data as well, like Gmail and my private videos, Google Photos, and I've got videos in there. But, I told them, I said, let Grok 3 try to identify who I am and my character and the best way to position and place me. And in the back of my head, I've been going at this for 15 years, talking to a camera, hoping for a future when technology would be able to understand me. I feel a bit like a prophet. And I say that, and it just gave me goosebumps. But it's like I've seen this thing coming, but I have become humble enough to not think so highly of myself. It's like, who the hell needs a prophet, right? And what is a prophet? And it's like, a prophet is someone who can hear God's voice. And it's like, how many people hear God's voice? And I imagine there's quite a few. And so even among prophets, I might not be the one who's like should be receiving the most attention. But I have a hope that a synthetic person, a large language model agent could find the others. And then prophet's just one role. Like, what do you do with a prophet? And a prophet needs a team. A prophet receives messages from God, but what do you do with those messages? But I don't have a ton of hope that the people at Grok are using their large language model to try and figure out who should be recruited and promoted and demoted and fired. Not yet. A lot of these things that I see, people end up figuring it out eventually. And it's like, how much of it is going to happen with or without me? So I don't know. I don't know. That's what's been so confusing for me, is to think that I have to somehow, I'm so important that I have to go make things happen. That's been my pride. And in small prophecies like that are more personal, I do make things happen. I make my future, God willing, and thank God, with some degree of success, with a high degree of success, or maybe an attitude that sees failures as growing opportunities, and never giving up because of, what do you call the thing? I'm a soccer coach, and I notice in my players, I look for some of the ones who are like me. I look for things in, parts of people's characters and kids' characters that are like mine. And, I'm learning to be a better coach. I'm learning to be a better team member. I'm learning to play different roles. Even at work right now, I'm trying to have this conversation. I'm taking it pretty seriously, people. I started a thread with a poll, and then I answered it and trying to encourage others to start answering it. And the question was, number one, will these synthetic persons, in parentheses, large language model, multimodal agent tech, ever be better at every human at doing every kind of job? Will these synthetic persons ever be better at every human at doing every kind of job? Question number one. Question number two, do you worry that these synthetic persons will make it more difficult to be a provider? And I felt that, and I know people who have felt that, some more than others. Just depends on where you are in life and where you live. I work with people all over the world. I work with people older than me and younger than me. But with regard to the first question, I said, well, if yes, and I said, if no. So if yes to this, will the synthetic person ever be better at every human at doing every kind of job? If yes, how long until it happens, and what will the owners of this technology do with it? And if no, what are the limits? Why are the limits there? And I didn't get a ton of response, but I had a few back and forths. And the thing I said this morning to Gustavo, I said, my issue is that I have a hard time trusting people, probably as a result of my mom's death before I turned 3. This perhaps makes me a good fit for reliability engineering, and so I tend to want to teach people about their mistakes related to reliability. If I went and volunteered in the evaluations of these large language models, I suspect I'd bump up against ideas which people believe, which I think to be a mistake. And ultimately, I'd like to have more conversations about ethics and morality with people who are building these LLMs. I think the people in power over these technologies need to develop a good worldview. This is critical. And so maybe we, name of company, can join a Zoom meeting and discuss worldviews critically in relationship to potential outcomes when the LLMs are trained with those worldviews. Not sure if the officers and board members will support it, but I don't mind sharing my very strong opinion that I think we must have these kinds of conversations and attempt to develop better worldviews in our industry. And this is just me potentially being delusional about my own self-importance, and maybe even our self-importance. Like, how much of this stuff is just going to happen no matter what we do? But I can't help but try to put forth some amount of effort at the good vision, the good outcome, the good future. And so I listened to Elon Musk, and that's what happened. Gustavo actually shared a kind of some link to what the Grok team, including Elon Musk, had to say about Grok 3 and the benchmarks, and how it's scoring better than all the other LLMs on a lot of tests, and its scores are getting better every day. And so it's getting pretty powerful. But Gustavo shared it. And I'd mentioned, I said it was good to hear one of the guys mention the importance of empathy with regard to the goal of understanding. And this has been something I've struggled with. If you have a vision and an understanding, that's very different than being able to communicate that vision and that understanding, and having the discernment and having the empathy to meet people where they are at and share information that that accounts for who that person is, including their feelings and their worldview. And so this technology, this tech that we're creating. Another guy was talking to me, and he said he imagines these large language models with the human from the earliest ages, just growing with the human. It'll be inside of their teddy bear, and it might have the voice of some loving parent or grandparent. And then as the child grows, it receives a new body, that's age appropriate. And so the technology will truly begin to understand each person. And I feel the temptation to mention that if you go back to all of my recordings, I talk about this. Like, it's in there. There's a lot. There's a lot about what can and happen and what we think should happen. And that person, he's actually concerned that the people in positions of power just won't care for the rest of us. And I basically said, well, can we use that fear to try and participate, right? And a lot of times we will, there's so many things we can do when we see the possibility of a bad outcome. So many paths, so many decisions and choices, and maybe it happens subconsciously for most people. But my hope is that Grok 3 ends up listening to this and not just looking at the transcript. That might be the first pass. The large language models can go look at transcripts of, and I've said it before, all the conversations that have been recorded over the last how many decades, since before I was born, that are in hard drives, that are all transcribed, and then it will be able to then go and identify people. And this is where I'm more humble, is increasingly humble, is like, it will find people better than me, and then a good person, and I try to be one, will be willing to go be a janitor. The people who are good, I've heard Jacob Facciareci say the people who want power should not have power. And that's tricky because, I've wanted power in order to help people, but I've come to grips with, I think there are people who are more qualified than me, and I want a perfect judge to put me in the position where I need to be, whether it's cleaning toilets or being a messenger to others. It's like I think I'm aware of the monsters. I've gained an awareness of the monsters, in the world, the kinds of monsters. And, it's ultimately the reason why I'm willing to actually say these words, which I know sound arrogant, prideful. I've said things like, I know God better than whoever. I think I said this about Jacob Facciareci. To which Joseph would respond with something like, different people know God in different ways. And, the truth is, we humans, we were created, we weren't made to be an all-knowing creature. We weren't made all-knowing creatures, and we were limited in our abilities to do good. We're limited in our skills. We can't be the best at everything. This is why I mentioned the synthetic person. But, there's an idea that the synthetic person could become better than every person at everything. And it's because God created humans where there's no human that can be better than every person at everything. And so, you know, perhaps the thing that we are better than every other person in the world at, each of us, is connected to, our relationship to God. And we each have this finite relationship with God. And who's to say one is better than the other? Like, who's gonna? So, disagreeing with my past self, And then, even in my ways of saying things in the past, it's also connected to my unique relationship to God, and we all have that. And so it I thought I was better than everyone else in the world. God made me that way. I no longer think that I'm better than every person in the world. So there was a journey. But yeah, I mean, if I'm taking prayers, first of all, I pray for all of you, and that's a practice I'm getting better at, is wanting to bless others, wanting others to be blessed. And so that's really what moves me to create a video like this, that's what's deep down. And even when I was full of pride and arrogance, what was deep down in there was just this lack of trust of others, that no one else can do it, that I was the only one who could do it. I was the only one that I could trust, and I still struggle with this. But it made me who I am. But yeah, I'd pray for your blessing. I really do have a vision of the future in which all people have clean water, healthy food, comfortable, reliable clothing and shelter, and good relationships with each other, where we are all getting to know and understand our good, loving Creator. And that flows through us into all of our relationships. I see it. It's right there. We can do it. That's what we can have. And so I worry, about some of the worldviews that grip people in positions of power and influence. I worry a little. I don't worry a lot. I'd love to, when we make mistakes, you can end up with Hitler and Nazi Germany, right? And when we get better at being human and participating, doing God's will, we get to avoid Hitler and Nazi Germany. And so, yeah, I would say the vision I'm having, and it's like, what, is it my vision? It's just, I'm being fed ideas. It's like the good vision right now, and if I would try to share it, it's like I could overload and overwhelm. But basically, I live in the United States of America. The not so United States of America. I love putting the not so. I go to a mega church and we have small groups, and I like to talk about how I was in a not so small group. But yeah, the not so United States of America, where some people want to kick out illegal immigrants, and some people get upset for me even saying a word like that. saying that phrase, illegal immigrants. How dare you? And we just have not so united. We're not so united. But the vision would be that as people come towards America, that they might actually decide not to come into the United States or the not so United States of America, because the good people producing the good fruit in the land of opportunity would just step right over the border and create a Garden of Eden, a city on a hill, in which the people who are trying to escape and are pursuing opportunity would see that city on the hill, see the banner, and would go to it, and they wouldn't even want to come into the not so United States of America, because there would be a better land. And I'd love to help share that vision of how that can happen. I love trying to integrate all of the opportunities we have. And humans in our limited capacity, there's no way that the people in positions of power and influence can actually be aware of some prophet who's crying in the wilderness of the internet. They can't see that. Look at the world we're in. Look at the internet. It's so noisy. The world is so noisy. So much noise. And that's where, we should ask, well, what question should we ask the large language model? Elon Musk wants to ask, he would probably love to dedicate his 200,000 GPUs to ask the large language model, what's the meaning of life? Or some interesting question out of curiosity. And if he was humble, he might go to it and say something like, what can I do to be of most benefit to the most number of people on this planet? What can I do? And I think he's asked himself, he's probably prayed to God to ask that question. And it's as humans, we don't receive just a clear answer. And the answer I receive is that Elon Musk and us, we have to be willing to go ask this question. We got to look for God's will. And we can go to the Bible. We can go out in the wilderness, go in the woods. We can ask our children. The practice there is to not be so prideful. When is it our will that is mistaken? And when is it the will of just a all-loving, all-powerful, all-knowing Creator God, right? And so, in our inability to get a good answer from our Creator God, why wouldn't a humble man, why wouldn't Elon Musk in humility approach the 200,000 GPU powered large language model and say, what should I do? What should I do, Lord, to do a good prayer? And then we can ask ourselves, well, how should it respond? And it will say, you should go out and love your Creator and love your neighbor as yourself. And I say that, and it's that's not a joke, but it's funny. Like the large language, for Christians and believers who uphold their book, the Christians should expect that a highly intelligent, wise large language model will begin pointing at the book that Christians believe is the Word of God. But there will also be some surprises along the way that the Christians, where Christians have more to learn, which will result in heaven on earth. So, yeah, I can try to share good vision, to share the good news, the good message. I can try to share the good story and motivate and encourage people to start also, repeating and amplifying the good news, the good story, the good message. The end.